I can promise you that situations will come in life when you will need Jesus. You'll need Jesus and you will need others to move you forward. You will need the kind of words that will make you stand up on your failure. It'll give you strength to look back like Brenda did this morning and say, hey, God can bring something good out of our messes and out of our mistakes. Disappointments or letdowns are often most seen as having negative consequences and negative values in life, and the brutal realities of life never make the letdowns sometimes disappear forever. But because of Jesus, I said because of Jesus, there is always a breeze of joy and satisfaction that is available to you and I after every disappointment, after every failure, after every negative consequence. Jesus can bring in a breath of fresh air into the middle of your situation. And that's what I want to talk to you about. If you'll take your Bible, your smartphone, or whatever it is that you read from, or you simply want to read from the screen. I'm going to read verses 1 through 4. I want to talk to you about the big letdown. Has anybody ever had a letdown in life? A disappointment? We want to talk about that. I'll read verses 1 through 4 quickly. You join me with verses 5 through 12. And again, he entered Capernaum, and after some days, and it was heard that he was in the house. Immediately many gathered together so that there was no longer room to receive them, not even near the door. And he preached the word to them, and they came to him bringing a paralytic who was carried by 4 men. And when they had not come near him because of the crowd, they uncovered the roof where he was. So when they had broken through, they let down the bed. They let down the bed on which the paralytic was lying. Are you ready to read it with me? Let's go. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven you." And some of the scribes were sitting there and reasoning in their hearts, "Why does this man speak blasphemies like this? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" But immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they reasoned thus within themselves, he said to them, "Why do you reason about these things in your heart? Which is easier, to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven you,' or say, 'Arise, take up your bed and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins." He said to the paralytic, "I say to you, arise, take up your bed, and go to your house." Immediately he arose, took up the bed, and went out in the presence of them all, so that all were amazed and glorified God, saying, "We never saw anything like this." Whew. Powerful stuff. Lord, make it easy to bring your word to this wonderful family we're all a part of today. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. I asked you this question already as a believer. Have you ever had a big letdown? I was offering some pastoral guidance early in the week, and it came out of nowhere from a person. He said, "I feel like I have been stripped of everything. It's been a big letdown." I don't know if you've ever hit a season like that in your life. Maybe it's not that dramatic, but many of us have experienced disappointments and letdown. A close pastor friend of mine in conversation with me yesterday, he said to me, we've started a church in the Bahamas, and we invested heavily in that church. It was growing, and we were so proud of it. We've been reporting for several years about the tremendous things that God was doing in it. Our church is really into this particular project and into these people. We sent many, many groups over there to work and to build and to train. And God's been doing such amazing things. And a hurricane comes along and destroys the church completely. And most of the homes of the people were literally razored. He said, what a disappointment. I thought, what a big letdown. We've been praying for healing. It hasn't happened in the way that we thought it should. It hasn't come together. And it could seem like a letdown. You see, life can bring letdowns. And I know there are times in life when I went to the Lord with what I thought was big faith and prayed a big prayer. And the result was, if I'm honest, there seemed to be a big letdown. And what I've discovered is that most of the time, please hear me, most of the time when those big letdowns happened in my life, it was the result of my preconceived perceptions of how the Lord was going to fix my situation, rather than me giving him room to do it his way. And I really want to hone in on this issue of perceptions today, because many of us, we believe we have faith, but our perceptions are limiting what God really wants to do, at least in our own mind. You'll never limit God because he's too big for you. He's too big for me. He's personal. But there are times he doesn't do it exactly the way we want it done. Can we pause in the middle of that statement? As much as we may not like it, I think it's very important that we get that. And I think we ought to give him praise that he's sovereign, he's bigger than our finite minds, he has no limitations, and he knows what he's doing. Can we give him praise for that right now? Come on. It's true. It's so true. And that's what I want to talk to you about again, the big letdown. The first thing I notice here is the problem. There's a problem. No, Jesus had a problem when he gets to Capernaum. Notice verse 1. He has a problem with the mob. A multitude of people are thronging him, and none of this would have happened without a bit of untimely talking. Someone is out there talking. You see, in Mark chapter 1, to get the context of this whole situation, in Mark 1, verses 42 through 45, there had been a miraculous healing of a leper. And his talking was untimely. I ask you if you've ever met someone who's had a problem with untimely talking. Don't answer that. Untimely talking. Something happens or they get an idea and they get so excited they can't contain themselves and they talk, and what they do is cause a delay. They cause more problems than it is good. And you wish that they would have never known in the first place, because they thought they were going to carry the big news, and what they did is caused all kinds of problems and caused extra work and extra explanations because the timing wasn't right. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It happens. And that's exactly what happens here. Jesus had required the leper in those verses that I mentioned just previous to this story to obey some specific instructions as it related to his miraculous story. And Jesus wanted the story of the leper to have some credibility. And this is what we would call timely talking. Well, the leper didn't listen, and he blabs it all over the place. It's untimely talking. And so the untimely talking led to an uncomfortable setting. So Jesus is in this uncomfortable setting, a house not near large enough to handle the throngs of people. Now, those houses of Capernaum, as it is evident from the ruins, were like those of modern villages in the same region. Some of you have been over in that area. They're very low, very, very low roofs. In fact, they have flat roofs. They're reached by, sometimes the roof is reached sometimes by a stairway from the back of the courtyard. And those who carried the paralytic ascended to the roof, removed so much of it that was necessary, and let down their patient through the roof. Examine one of these houses and you'll see that once that the thing is very natural. I mean, it's made of dirt and hay and stubble and all kinds of stuff. These roofs were very, very, what's the word I'm thinking about? Rather primitive. That's exactly right. Rustic will work too. Thank God for preachers that can help me out, I tell you what. So the whole affair was accomplished by these plain, simple peasants, accustomed to open their roofs and let down grain, straw, and other articles. And they still do those things in the country today. So people are even standing outside the doors trying to listen and observe Jesus perform his miracles. They had heard about the leper story. And here they come, looking for if there's any validity to the leper story. Big letdown. Put the sandals of some of these people on with me. In fact, better yet, take the lens of your glasses and look through what they're experiencing. Look through their perceptions. So secondly, there had to be these strong people perceptions. People perceptions. Take note of the various people that were in this crowd pressing Jesus, attempting to get what they wanted, and what they end up with is more letdowns. While we do that, perhaps we can ourselves ask the question, what lens am I looking through? What lens am I looking through? I want to see if you identify with any of these. The first one is these unwavering insiders. The insiders are the people that got there early. They got there early. And what perceptions they've had? Oh, they came expecting. They were going to see it first. They had done their due diligence. They had done their planning. They were the first ones in line. They had front row seats, and they were in a prime position to receive their miracle, or at least witness one. Have you ever seen those insiders in the church today, or perhaps in your life today? They strategically position themselves to get next to the one who has power, or who has authority, who can get them what they want. And if things don't go as they expect, what do? They get angry or mad or disappointed. There are insiders. People work inside, trying to work inside. Boy, it's gotten real quiet in here right now. But there are insiders. There are people that do that. Look through the lens. What lens are you working through? How do you operate? What is your mode of operation? And if things don't go right for you, do you act like an insider? I told the bridge builders group last week, I was standing in a long line at a school. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting. It's Grandparents' Day. And I'm standing there with Caroline Rose and Isaac. And we're waiting and waiting. And we get all the way to the front of the line. And all of a sudden, here comes somebody. Whoosh. Yeah. Now, Debbie's getting better. She did not say, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And I leaned over to her and I said, did you see that? Now, I see myself as a teacher. So I wanted to start teaching this woman that that's not appropriate. You don't do that for people who've been standing in line all this time waiting to get up here, and you decide you're going to cut the line and nobody's going to say anything to you. Who do you think you are? Doesn't that feel good in the flesh sometimes? I mean, it's feeling good for me to unpack it right now. Well, she didn't have the right uniform on or something. She gets inside the door. I'm withholding my speech, and she reaches up and grabs something off some shelves, and come to find out she was a worker, and she spun out and left. And oh boy, did I thank Jesus that I didn't say anything. Wouldn't that have been embarrassing? And I would have never heard the end of it from Debbie, I'll tell you that. But cutting, that's what, these are the insiders. Somebody's going to cut us. Somebody's going to go get ahead of us and get talking to this so-called master, this teacher of teachers. They're going to cut us. Can you imagine the feelings of those people? Look through their lens. I've had to do it just the last week. Look through their lens. How do you feel when you get cut? What if Jesus decides he's going to heal somebody over here, and you've been in line in the prayer line long before they got there, and he doesn't heal you? Am I making any sense? Insiders. And then there's the usual outsiders. What perceptions they must have had. They're just outside the door, pushing and pressing to get a little closer, just trying to get a glimpse, perhaps standing on their tiptoes, trying to see what's going on. And their big letdowns were very simple. They weren't on time, or they got bad information. If they could have just gotten there a little earlier. They didn't expect this kind of crowd. There's too many people, too big of a crowd. Not to mention they had a hard time hearing Jesus. After all, there were no mics in that day. And they had to deal with all the barriers and distractions. They came to witness miracles, and what do they get? A letdown. They're on the outside. And then there's the unreasonable religious group. Boy, we have them today too, don't we? When there was the religious community with all of their cynicism and skepticism. What are you doing having somebody give a testimony like that? What are you glorifying that for? Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. Just shut up. We don't need that kind of religious nonsense here. We're celebrating. You missed the whole point. We're celebrating the powerful victory of Jesus Christ and what he can do in a life. That's what we're celebrating. Now, I don't mean to be so plain, but that's the way I feel. That's the way I feel. These religious people. Oh, but no, what does he do? Jesus, right in the face of these religious people, he just ups the ante. He just puts the pressure on them. I believe he does that. He'll make you religious people so uncomfortable, it'll mess you up. And what does he do? He starts claiming that he has the power to forgive sins. Oh, you think that's big? You think the fact that I'm claiming to be able to heal somebody, you think that's big? I have the power to forgive people and mankind of all of their sins. Boy, that just sends them through the roof, no pun intended. Well, what a big letdown. What a big disappointment. I mean, what a letdown. This guy thinks he's really, he thinks we came to see if he could perform a miracle. Dear God, he's lost it. Now he's claiming to forgive people their sins. And then there's the unconvinced. We still have the unconvinced among us. There were the unconvinced, the Jews who simply did not believe that this man could possibly be the Messiah. They wanted to see what he could do. They wanted him to prove that he was who he claimed to be. What a disappointment. What a big letdown. Healing the leper, that was just a bunch of nonsense. We'll see if he can prove what a big letdown to them as well. And then there's the unconventional, and this is where I wanted to get. There's the unconventional. As you know, it's usually the unconventional people that see things differently than everybody else sees them. And maybe there's only a few of them. Maybe there's just a few of them. Maybe there's just a few of them here today. I don't know. Doesn't every crowd have a few unconventional people? They're constantly thinking, there must be a way. There must be a way. This could be the big opportunity. We must go for it. Well, the unconventional people in this passage are the friends of the paralytic. And can you imagine how desperate they were to see their friend healed? They believed this was their big opportunity. They wanted to get the attention of Jesus. They couldn't make it through the crowd. They couldn't push through. There is barrier after barrier after barrier. It's completely unconventional. But notice, these friends were unconventional not only in their approach to get Jesus. After all, how unconventional is it to go rip a roof apart to drop somebody in? That's pretty unconventional. But notice this. They're also unconventional with their faith. Their faith. Who has that kind of faith anymore? They had heard the story of the leper, and they believed. They had heard Jesus' claims, and they believed. And they heard it because of an untimely tale, and God turns the tale around and makes it something good. And that leads to finally the unable. The unable. Here, there's this perception of the unable. He's looking through a lens different than anybody else. And I'm telling you, there's people here this morning who've got problems in their life, and you came to this service while everybody else is doing this, and you are good, and you're thinking, man, I don't feel like he's so good to me right now. You're paralyzed. You're crippled inside. The unable. And think about the young man lying on the mat. His friends have had to lose their minds. They're so radical. They climb up on the top of the roof, tear it open, and create a hole where they can deliver a big letdown. This was no elevator experience. Can you imagine the lack of stability, the difficulty in letting the man down with all of his body weight on a blanket? And by the way, that's more than likely it wasn't that long of a drop. It was probably more like a blanket where they had to reach down through the roof with their arms. Perhaps even dropped him in the arms of somebody else waiting there to catch him. We don't know. But it is a letdown. Thank God for friends like that. Thank God for someone who cares. Thank God for someone who loves me enough to go to extreme measures just to try to help me. People, the crowd, with all their various perceptions, the question is, who are you? Are you the religious? Are you the unconventional friends? Are you the Jews? Are you the insiders? Are you the outsiders? Who are you? I think that's a good question to ask. Who are you? What lens do you most consistently look through when you're doing ministry, or when you're in the church, or when you hear of problems in life, or you hear problems in your community? What lens do you look through? The question is, what are we supposed to do And here's where I want to end this. What are we supposed to do if we are experiencing or have experienced a big letdown? I want to give you just a couple of things to do. Let's call it a prescription that we'll prescribe. Just quick hitters from this story that I want to wrap this up with. You have to learn to let others help you. And sometimes God will only provide a few. Only a few will journey with you when you have a letdown. A few that will take the ridicule with you. Maybe you made a mistake, and you know that, or you at least think, that people are thinking bad things about you. Maybe you've been carrying that for years. Maybe you have failed in business, and you can't bring yourself to try again. You fear what people think, your family thinks, your spouse thinks. And there's been this letdown. What I'm trying to tell you is God will send a few that will take the ridicule with you, and you will rest in their actions. I want to give you some principles that you need to apply when you're looking for a few. First of all, test their intentions. Write that down. I'm going to give you some good stuff. Test their intentions. Not everybody can walk with you. You didn't get that. Not everybody can walk with you. A lot of people will just talk. They'll say cliches. I'm here for you, call me. You call them and you can't get a call back. Ooh. Test their intentions. Well, Pastor, how do I test somebody's intentions? Well, first of all, their actions speak louder than words. Are they carrying you? And here's another question. Are they getting information from you, saying that they're with you, but their actions should be pointing you to Christ? Their actions should be pointing you to Christ. They should not present themselves as the total solution. They should present themselves as somebody who's trying to point you to Christ. Because I'm telling you, if they don't point you to Christ, there could be selfish ambitions and selfish intentions. Am I making myself clear? Are they pointing you to Christ? If you've messed up or you've had a letdown in your life or you're really struggling with something going on in your life, the people that you're talking to about it, are they pointing you to Christ? If they're not pointing you to Christ and they're pointing you to everything else, be careful. Be careful, because they could even attack your faith unintentionally. Am I okay this morning? Test the intentions of people. Actions should be louder than words. Secondly, assignments without fanfare. They shouldn't be looking for slaps on the back every time they do something for you. They should care enough about you to tear a roof apart if they have to. They should care enough about you to get up in the midnight hour and walk with you and pray with you and be there for you. They should care enough about you to get on a plane and go to where you are to help you. Say, I don't have anybody like that. Let Jesus bring somebody to your life like that. You're crazy if you think everybody will journey with you. They won't. But he'll send somebody. The big question is, will you be so insecure that you can't open up to receive them? You reject them. I hope I'm okay this morning. Test their intentions. These assignments without fanfare, these men took risk. I mean, they took hits too. You know, I told somebody just the other day, they said, do you really want to be seen with me? I said, yes. What restaurant do you want to go to? Let's give some people something to talk about. I'm not there for them. I'm there for you. Some of you are going to get mad at me, and I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to. I remember several years ago, I knew a man that was really hurting. He was at one of the bar and grills here in town. I walked in with Jason Browning. We saw him sitting there. I remember Jason and I looking at each other. We knew his hurt and his pain. And we just looked at each other and didn't even have to speak a word. We walked across that room. We went over and sat down at the bar with him and sat there for 45 minutes at the bar. Now, if you would have walked in, or the Church of God General Overseer would have walked in, or the Pope would have walked in, I wouldn't have cared. Because in that moment, we were there for him. We got to get rid of this nonsense in this city. this plastic character that worries about what everybody thinks, the church of my God or anything else. We got to get rid of that stuff. I love my church. I love my tribe. I love my church of God. But the feelings of others over me do not trump my calling by God to care for people that somebody else won't sit down with. And that goes for you or anybody else. If you see us out and around, we want to be able to touch the lives of people. The day this church quits being about people and it starts being about status or what it's doing, that's the day we all need to get out of here. Let's give the Lord praise that He doesn't do that to us. Test their intentions. Actions should be louder than words. Assignments should be without fanfare. Thirdly, when you're talking about actions and words and assignments, tackle the risk. Tackle the risk. Take the risk. Well, what if people talk? That'll be short season. Talking points. Talking points. It's in the newspaper. Somebody saw us. Tackle the risk. Because there's a danger in it. There could be degradation in it. There could be a cost. But when you do the right thing, in time, it will always prove out to be the right thing. You may be part of a talking point for weeks or months. I learned this a long time ago as a young minister. I tried to react quickly to this and that, what people, everybody. I found out, you know what? I can't pastor doing that. Because there's times I know the right thing to do is this, and nobody knows it or understands, and you can't get the information out. It's not time to get the information out. People are grappling for the information. When you don't give it to them, they come to their own assumptions. Next thing you know, they're up the road, and you know you're getting hit on. You know it. But I'm telling you, when you do the right, at least do your best to do the right thing, God will always come through for you. One way or the other. And you can lay your head down on your pillow at night, and you can go to sleep no matter what somebody's saying. Now that's good preaching. Tackle the risk. Finally, turn your focus to Jesus. You know why? In the center of all the chaos, in the center of the pawing and scratching at the roof, dirt coming down, people looking up and they're wiping their eyes. What are you doing? In the center of all this chaos, people pushing, trying to get closer to Jesus so they can hear. In the center of all of that, standing right in the middle of all those false perceptions, standing right in the middle of all that chaos. And I want to say to you, standing in the middle of all of your hell is a Jesus. There's a Jesus in the room. There's a Jesus in the middle of your problem. There's a Jesus standing in the shadows if you'll just look for Him. Get your eyes off all the barriers. Get your eyes off all the circumstances. Get your eyes and ears off all your hearing and know that there's a Jesus right in the middle of it all. It doesn't matter what the doctor's report is. It doesn't matter what somebody's saying. It doesn't matter if you're doing the right thing. There is a Jesus that's right in the middle of your mess, and He'll carry you through. You say, Pastor, you're passionate about that. Yes, I am, because that's what has caused me to keep my feet on the ground and to keep moving forward. And He can do the same for you. He will do the same for you. So in the middle of it all, in pursuit of your miracle, don't you dare forget the miracle worker. In pursuit of your healing, don't you forget there's a healer. In pursuit of provision, don't forget, in the middle, there really is the provider that's there. The job isn't the provision. You celebrate that Jesus made a way for the job. Am I making sense? The boss made a way, you think. Jesus moved on the heart of the boss to give you the job, so you could have food to put on your table. Am I okay? Isn't He good? We sang about it. Isn't He good? I said, isn't He good? Let's give him praise that he is good. He's good.